watching Primetime. I'm Tamanna Inamdar.
And I'm Ayush Allahabad. Let's have a look at today's headlines. The Modi government takes another step to clean up the banking system, gets Lok Sabha approval to issue recap bonds worth 80,000 crore rupees.
Idea Cellular boosts its war chest, plans to raise over 6,500 crore rupees ahead of its proposed merger with Vodafone.
The UIDAI dismisses Tribune's report that full Aadhaar details are being made available for as low as 500 rupees.
The government is looking to make it easier for consumers to report violations of GST anti-profiteering law.
Indian markets rise after a two-day lull. Banks, metals and capital goods lead the rally. The rupee ends at a 2.5-year high against the dollar. Well, let's start with our top story. The Lok Sabha today approved the government's demand for additional 80,000 crore rupees fund to issue recap bonds. This is the first tranche of the 1.35 lakh crore bond recap plan laid out by the government. Nikunj Ori outlines the contours of the scheme in this report.
The recapitalization bonds that will be used for infusing capital in public sector banks will not have an SLR status, meaning banks who would be subscribing for these bonds will the amount would not add up to their statutory liquidity ratio of 19.5% as mandated by the Reserve Bank of India. According to a government official, recapitalization bonds will not be tradable and will be cash neutral for the government. According to the same official, the interest payout for the government will be calculated by the Department of Economic Affairs and will be notified soon. Remember, the government sought supplementary demand for grants worth 80,000 crore rupees today for infusing capital in public sector banks through issuance of government securities.
Well, the Reserve Bank of India has put yet another lender under prompt corrective action. State-owned Allahabad Bank is the latest to be put under the RBI scanner. This after an on-site inspection revealed high non-performing assets and negative return on assets for 2 consecutive years. Allahabad Bank is the 11th bank from the 21 listed government lenders to be brought under the RBI's watch list. Once under the PCA framework, restrictions are placed on dividends, branch expansion, and in some cases, lending based on the discretion of the regulator. Well, to talk more on the move to recap banks and also the other corrective measures that the government is taking, the health of the banking sector, in fact, we're joined now by Ashwin Parekh, Managing Partner at Ashwin Parekh Advisory. Thank you so much, Mr. Parekh, for speaking with us this evening on Prime Time. Welcome to the show. First comments on the first tranche of recap bonds for 80,000 crore rupees. In the current situation, how will this be deployed? Which banks, in your view, could be the first recipients of this?
Well, I mean, to begin with, the news is really very commendable. I mean, the government's effort is very commendable to the extent that, you know, when it was mentioned that 2.11,000 crores will be infused into the banking system, we now know for sure that before the end of this year, that is before March 2018, the government will certainly put in 80,000 crores worth of capital into banking system. Now, looking at the way the banking companies are leveraged, you know, we find that the banks themselves, on the strength of this, may be able to raise additional capital of about 27 to about 30,000 crores and then take deposits. So even if I leverage it in a normal bank, 9 times the capital, that's the kind of additional deposit the banking system may be able to take on the strength of this capital. Therefore, the multiplier effect on credit and therefore the amount of money that will flow into the bank, into the economy by way of working capital loans and bank loans will be substantial. I mean, I certainly see this as a very major measure to stimulate the economy. It's a big stimulus program in some form, basically.
I'm also joined now by Karthik Srinivasan. He's Senior Vice President at ICRA, and he joins us on the phone line. And in fact, ICRA today has, Moody's and ICRA has put out a report Karthik, on the GNP is likely to peak by the end of FY18, higher provisioning, which could hurt banks by FY19. But let's start by talking about the recap bond plan. Ashwin Parekh says it's a really welcome move. My question to you is, how much will it help at this point, considering the extent of bad loans in the system at about 8 lakh crore rupees?
I think the move is good. A large part of the bonds, at least initially, may go towards cleaning up the bank balance sheet. Our own estimate was that out of the 1.35 recap bonds, government may need to infuse about 95,000 crores in the current financial year itself. So what we understand, while it's still the details are awaited, close to about 9,500 crores has already been infused into various public sector banks over the last couple of months. And, with this incremental 80,000 odd crores, which is being talked about once that gets passed, then that would take the cumulative amount to about 90 odd thousand crores, which is more or less in line with our estimates that the system would require for FY18. A significant part of this technically, would go towards the higher provisioning requirements that the banks would need to make on account of their impaired assets. But clearly, it would help them clean up their balance sheet to a large extent. And as we've already seen, we've had a couple of public sector banks raise equity from the market, and definitely that would help them grow their credit book. Not so much this year, but definitely put them on a stronger pedestal to restart the lending operations by early next year.
Mr. Parekh, in the other news today, of course, Allahabad Bank became the 11th public sector bank to be put under the Prompt Corrective Action Program. Do you think that this multi-pronged approach is working? If you look at it along with, the IBC and how many stress assets have been pushed for corrective action under the IBC regime as well?
Yeah, certainly, let's look at the whole reform, of the IBC. We will all agree that it was considered as one of the major steps. It was considered as a major move. Now, we did realize, when we started the program, that a lot of constituents were taking a little longer. The judiciary system was getting challenged. It was very anticipated. We had known that there would be some of the learning involved. Now, what seems to be happening is arising out of different decisions which have happened in the last 1 year, 6 months particularly. For example, in Jayaprakash case, we saw, that because of the residential development, construction, building of buildings, there was a certain order of, method in which, the money had to be settled. And there it was said that the financial lenders come after, those who own the flats or the apartments in those blocks. So, we're coming across with these clarifications now. But one thing you will see, whether it is now the corrective action or the action that the RBI is suggesting on Allahabad Bank and other 11 banks, the government and the RBI seems to be very seized of the fact. They seem to be working on a very well worked out program, and we're learning as we go along. But corrective actions are coming forth very fast.
Another point that was mentioned in the report, Karthik, the Modi ICRA report that we're talking about, was that the money is coming in. There is an attempt to get these PSB banks on their feet, but it does not necessarily guarantee that the moral hazards have been removed or the governance standards have improved to ensure that this cycle does not repeat itself. Do you think that that is one loophole which needs to be closed?
It definitely is in terms of autonomy and independence given to the bank management, and they need to be held accountable. I think there is definitely a scope to improve governance on that front, which could ensure that these kinds of mishaps don't reoccur in future.
All right. Thank you so much, Ashwin Parekh and Karthik Srinivasan, for that conversation. So a lot of news from the banking sector today, and there's much more coming, Ayush.
Absolutely, Tamanna. But staying with banking, absolutely. The Reserve Bank of India has asked banks to temporarily refrain from initiating insolvency proceedings against Jaiprakash Associates. The RBI has asked ICICI Bank, which is the largest lender to the company, to first seek clarification from the Apex Court before proceeding with the matter. Vishwanath Nair gets us the details in this report.
What we understand through our sources is that Jaiprakash Associates was part of the 29 stressed accounts that the Reserve Bank of India had put in the second list, where the bankers had time till the 13th of December to resolve it outside the NCLT process, failing which they would have to take it to NCLT, simple and clean. But what happened eventually is that the Reserve Bank of India reached out or has had a communication with ICICI Bank, the lead lender in this case, and told them that you hold off temporarily on any insolvency proceedings till you get some clarity from the Supreme Court whether the bankers can go ahead and invoke any insolvency. The issue is in the JP Infratech case, which is part of the first 12 insolvency cases, the Supreme Court got involved in the matter and has stayed the insolvency proceedings. Apart from that, they have also put in some kind of restrictions on the directors and the promoters of Jaiprakash Associates, which is the promoting company of JP Infratech. They've said that you cannot sell or trade in any of your assets. So till there is some clarity from the Supreme Court, the bankers cannot go ahead and invoke insolvency in JP Associates. That is what we understand from our sources.
Now, Idea Cellular plans to raise 3,250 crore rupees by allotting shares on a preferential basis to the promoter group entities. The board also set up a panel to consider options to raise an additional 3,500 crore rupees. Swami Sarkar has all the details in this report.
Idea promoters will be infusing around 3,250 crore rupees in Idea Cellular. As of now, Idea Cellular will be issuing close to 33 crore equity shares to the promoters at 99.5 rupees per share, which is at a price below the current market price of around 104 rupees per share. Also, post this infusion, the promoter shareholding in the company will increase. It will go up to 47.2% from current 42.4% in the company. Now, why this fund infusion was required? This fund infusion was required to curb the rising debt and worsening leverage ratio of the company. Now, if you see in the last 3 quarters, Idea's leverage ratio, that is net debt to EBITDA, has increased from 5 times to 7 times. So this fund infusion will put a break to that and reduce the company's net debt to EBITDA. Also, along with this, the company is also looking to raise around 3,500 crore rupees through either right issue, QIP, or a preferential issue. As of now, there is no certain decision that has come out for this 3,500 crore rupees. So we'll have to wait and watch how this happens. Now, JM Financials in its note that was released before the fund infusion had clearly said that a fresh equity funding would allow Idea, would give Idea a better chance to defend its revenue and market share. So this fund infusion was quite necessary for Idea at this point of time, which has come in from the promoters, which is a good thing for the company.
Now on to a Bloomberg exclusive. Hindalco has submitted bids to buy US-based Alaris in its bid to expand its overseas operations. Hindalco has made a non-binding offer through its US unit, Novelis, and is all set to conduct due diligence. Sources told Bloomberg. Alaris is valued at around $2.5 billion, including debt. Alaris has had earlier agreed to sell itself to Shongwang USA for $2.3 billion, but the deal fell through in November after US officials raised national security concerns about the Chinese bidder. The deal could help buck the decline in overseas acquisitions by Indian companies. However, there is no certainty that Novelis will make a binding offer and other bidders could emerge. Now, the Unique Identification Authority of India has denied a report in the Tribune which revealed or claimed that there was a racket in Jalandhar through which a journalist was able to gain access to the Aadhaar database of 1 billion Indians for just 500 rupees. Ayush is now joining us with all the details once more. Ayush, what happened in this story?
Absolutely, Tamanna. Imagine 500 rupees, 10 minutes to pull it off. But I'm going to break it down point by point and perhaps tell you what actually happened in this particular case. Now, Tamanna, it's interesting because this is, of course, a Tribune report. That's the first caveat they were putting out there. And now just to start off with what actually happened, UIDAI has dismissed reports of Aadhaar details being made available on payment of 500 rupees over WhatsApp by anonymous sellers. The UIDAI has clarified that its system is secure and any misuse can be traced and FIRs can be filed against the concerned persons. Now, the UIDAI's clarification comes after a report was published in the Tribune, which claimed that a certain group allowed people to get access to Aadhaar details for exchange of money. Now, the UIDAI has also said that this reported case appears to be an instance of misuse of the grievance redressal search facility. But the matter does not end there. Tribune has offered a point-by-point rebuttal to UIDAI's clarification on its website. But what is this rebuttal? Let's break it down for you. 1. Aadhaar data has been accessed by unauthorized people to answer the UIDAI's claim of no data breach having taken place. 2. The UIDAI's answer that misuse can be traced does not change that many people have been accessing the data for months and theft has already taken place. 3. The UIDAI's clarification that grievance redressal search does not give away biometric data per se, does not rule out the fact that personal details are not secure. Phishing scams need only this data and stuff like this to crack their passwords for net banking or credit cards and stuff like that. 4. UIDAI clarified that sharing Aadhaar numbers with authorized agencies is safe, but here specific individuals' data were available at hand. 5. If unauthorized people can gain access to Aadhaar data, how is Aadhaar as an enrollment system safe from bypassing? Now, Tribune's response is not the final word, of course. On the back and forth, either BJP has called the Tribune report fake news in its official handle. But Tamanna, it's interesting that, like I said, 10 minutes, one small vendor in Jalandhar, and this is the data that you had at your fingertips.
You know, the journalist who broke that story, Rachna Khera, will be joining us this evening at 8:30 on the Primetime debate. We're going to be talking about the technical safety, those implications of Aadhaar, and because we want to talk about what the security system around it is, we're being joined by Pawan Dugal, cyber law expert, and Saket Modi, co-founder and CEO, Lucidis Tech, two people who understand tech and who will break down for us whether there really is a threat or there isn't. Should we be afraid? And how scary could it be that people have access to data? That is scary in itself. The question which you raised and which UIDAI is talking about, Ayush, is what can people do with your Aadhaar number and your data if they don't have your biometrics?
Absolutely.
So we're going to come to that story in greater detail on Primetime Debate, so do stay tuned for that. The other big stories today: after cracking the whip on a few firms for violating the GST anti-profiteering law, the government is looking to make it easier for consumers to report such instances. Nikunj Ori has all the details in this report.
Government is considering to simplify forms for filing profiteering complaints by consumers against businesses who make unjust profits under the goods and services tax regime. The current forms regarding profiteering asks consumer to file details regarding a GST identification number of businesses, input tax credit that a particular business gets on that particular product, and HSN code of that particular product. Now, this is being done so that consumers who wish to file complaints against businesses who they think are profiteering under the goods and services tax regime, but do not step back because of these specific details which are not easily available. These forms have been, the standing committee under the anti-profiteering mechanism has been asked to suggest changes for simplification of these forms, and the simplified forms will be finalized in a few days by the National Anti-Profiteering Authority.
Well, Indian markets snapped 3 days of sluggish trade to end with strong gains. Both the benchmark indices posted sharp gains. Metal stock led the rally. Top gainers include L&T, ONGC, Asian Paints and Bajaj Finance, while key losers included Unitech and Phoenix Mills. Neeraj Shah sums up the action on the Lal Street in this report.
Well, it was a buoyant day of trade for sure for the key indices. So the Nifty and the Sensex up about 0.6%. If you ask me why is it that I'm calling it a buoyant day, that's because of the nature of the rally, and I'll get to that in a bit. The mid caps and the small caps didn't do too badly at all, so the market breadth was positive. But then look at the spate of gainers. You had a clutch of names gaining 2.5%, 3% odd. It was a very different heat map of the Nifty than what I've seen in the last few days. So L&T up 3.5%, ONGC up 3.5%. Asian Paints, Bajaj Finance about a couple of percentage points. Metal names did very well. Tata Steel up 3.5%. GSPL is not an index stock, but from the metal space up about 12% as well. JSL and a couple of other names too did really, really well for themselves. PSU banks across the board, large cap, mid cap, small cap. So SBI, PNB, UCO, there were IDBI and some others which had a fabulous move in trade today. That aside, there were disappointments, of course. So certain high flyers came off. Again, it's coincidental that I'm placing both Unitech and Phoenix Mills in the same bracket. The quality is starkly different, but both of them came off in the session today. And new highs for a whole bunch of names. I've chosen a few out here. Sterlite Tech up 10%. Carborundum Universal up about 7.5% as well. So good going. Sudarshan Chemicals, new highs up about 12%. Make Money Organics 12%. And incidentally, even the specialty chemical names, the home building equipment space like Visakha, etc., had a very, very good outing as well. So all in all, good day of trade, but more so for the large caps today. Very interested in seeing what the DII buy number is in the session today. They've been absent for the last few days from making large purchases. Let's see if today was any different.
Now, the Indian rupee strengthened against the US dollar further to end at a fresh 2.5-year high today. The rupee closed at 63.41 against the dollar. This is the strongest the rupee has ended against the dollar since the 14th of July 2015. And India's dominant services sector expanded in December, marking a reversal in the previous month's decline. The Nikkei India Services Purchasing Managers Index rose to 50.9 in December from 48.5 in November. Remember, a value above 50 indicates growth and a value below that indicates a contraction. The manufacturing gauge has advanced to 54.7 from 52.6, pushing up the composite index to 53 from 50.3, the highest since October 2016.
Fitch Ratings has said that India has the highest medium-term growth potential among large emerging markets. It has placed India at the top of the list among 10 largest emerging markets in its global economic outlook forecasts. India is projected to grow at 6.7% per annum over the next 5 years. China and Indonesia are ranked second with a projected growth of 5.5% per annum. The 5.5% forecast for China represents a significant slowdown from the recent historical average.
Now, the amendment bill to the Companies Act 2013 received the President's assent yesterday and is likely to be notified very soon. Shivani Saxena sums up the changes to the Companies Act in this report.
The Companies Act 2013 has now been amended twice in the 3 years since it came into force. The second amendment bill received presidential assent on January 3rd and is expected to be notified soon. Some of the key changes to the Companies Act will include the ability of the creditors to convert their debt into equity at a value that is less than the face value of the company's shares. Creditors will be able to avail this exemption or this relaxation only if their conversion is pursuant to a statutory insolvency process like the IBC or RBI-approved restructuring process. Presently, the company's law mandates that any issuance of share has to be either at par value or at a premium. Another key change now allows a company to extend loan or financial assistance to another company with which it has common directors. This was completely prohibited before the amendment. Now, loan or security may be provided to a company with which the lending company's directors are interested, but only with the consent of 75% of the shareholders. Experts believe that this will significantly aid entities in financing their group companies. Lastly, the provisions that pertain to related party transactions have seen some important changes. The key change is to the expansion of the definition of a related party, which will now include resident and foreign body corporates and not just Indian companies as was the case before the amendment. This means that transactions with related parties that are foreign entities or Indian LLPs, etc., will also have to comply with the conditions laid down under the law, such as the approval of shareholders for transactions that are not at arm's length.
Campaign for Judicial Accountability and Reforms has filed a review petition in the Supreme Court challenging the imposition of a 25 lakh rupee penalty on it. The review petition is against the dismissal of their earlier petition seeking an independent probe into bribery allegations in regard to a medical college. Arpan Chaturvedi sums up the developments in this report.
Well, the Campaign for Judicial Accountability and Reform, or CJAR, has filed this review petition, and what this review petition basically relates to is that the earlier petitions which were filed by CJAR and another subsequent petition was filed by lawyer Kamini Jaiswal. Both of them had sought identical relief, which was that an independent SIT inquiry be held into allegations that bribes were sought to influence the outcome of a case which was pending before the Supreme Court. And of course, the CBI, in connection to that allegations or inquiry, had arrested few middlemen and a retired Odisha High Court judge. But of course, the petition by Kamini Jaiswal and the other petition by CJR, both were dismissed. In the specific one petition which was filed by CJAR, the Apex Court had also imposed a cost or penalty of rupees 25 lakh. So the CJAR has filed a review petition against that judgment of the three-judge bench which was given by the Supreme Court.
Now, united opposition led by the Congress party continued to put pressure in the Rajya Sabha for the triple talaq bill to be put before a select committee. After a heated debate over the bill, the Rajya Sabha was adjourned for the day. Opposition leader Ghulam Nabi Azad said the bill seems unfair, as if the man is sent to prison for 3 years, there would be no one to pay for his wife's expenses. Trinamool Congress leader Derek O'Brien said the government does not want to empower women and they are exposed, while Finance Minister Arun Jaitley defended the bill. And while political parties continue to spar over the triple talaq bill in the Rajya Sabha, will the bill face legal hurdles? What is the legality of criminalizing triple talaq? We'll be talking more about that with Supreme Court advocate Kamini Jaiswal up ahead on Primetime Debate, so do tune in for that conversation. And the Mumbai police has denied permission to a summit scheduled to be addressed by Dalit leader Jignesh Mevani and JNU student leader Umar Khalid earlier today. This comes in light of the protests and the Bandh in Maharashtra yesterday over violence that took place in Bhima Koregaon in Pune. The police also detained students who gathered outside the hall for the All India Student Summit. A detained student leader called the police action a form of dictatorship and also said they will take their fight to Parliament. The Pune police has registered an FIR against Mevani and Khalid for their alleged provocative speeches at an event in Pune on December 31st.
Well, the stage seems to be all set for IPL 2018. MS Dhoni is heading back to Chennai Super Kings after he was retained by the IPL franchise in the latest player draft. Remember, the retention draft was held as two teams, namely the Chennai Super Kings and the Rajasthan Royals, made their way back to the Cricket League after a 2-year absence. Dhoni will be joined by Suresh Raina and Ravindra Jadeja. The Rajasthan Royals, on the other hand, have retained just one player, Australian Steve Smith. The Mumbai Indians have retained Rohit Sharma, Hardik Pandya and Jasprit Bumrah. Chris Morris, Rishabh Pant and Shreyas Iyer make their way back to Delhi. While Kings 11 Punjab have chosen to retain only Akshar Patel, Royal Challengers Bangalore have called back Virat Kohli, AB de Villiers and Sarfaraz Khan, while the Sunrisers Hyderabad have kept hold of David Warner and pacer Bhuvneshwar Kumar.
That's all the time we have this evening on Prime Time, but we're coming right back with Prime Time Debate. The two topics we're discussing this evening. First, the big Aadhaar breach. Can 500 rupees buy you access to data of every Indian who has signed up for Aadhaar? That's what Rachna Khera, the Tribune reporter, found. How shocking is that story and how unsafe are we? That's the first debate on Primetime Debate. And then we're going to be speaking with Kamini Jaiswal, because it's important to understand the legalities of the triple talaq bill apart from the politics around it. So stay tuned to Primetime Debate. We're coming right back.